Every year at Christmas for the past 50 or so, I've always looked for, what is there a new take, a new slant that could be a fresh reading of these familiar narratives? And I discovered something. Scientists have discovered that in the molecules around the world and in the molecules in our body, there is light. There is light. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. I have news for you. You are the light. Jesus said, I am the light of the world, but he also said, you are the light of the world. You don't put a lamp and put a bushel basket over it to hide the light, but you put it on a lampstand so that all can see the light that is there. This took place while Caesar Augustus, the first emperor of the Roman Empire. If you were to take in your imagination, put the Mediterranean Sea, and then circle it with from Europe to Great Britain to across northern Africa to Syria and all around, you have the Roman Empire. And there's a phrase that they called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. It was really a propaganda piece because there weren't any wars, because the pressure of the emperor was so strong that anybody that stepped out of line might be crucified. Sound familiar? Crucifixions were publicly exhibited lest anybody were to step out of line. So I was thinking, with all this light that we have inside, and a concept that Meister Eckhart, 13th century, wonderful theologian and mystic, he has the idea that the birthing is going on all the time. It's not a past tense. That you and I are called to birth Jesus right now. It's a constant birthing. It's a constant bringing him into this world. We were exploring this in the 4 Advent sermon series, Pauses on the Path to Christmas. The idea that we are not just hearing about something that happened to Zechariah, Elizabeth, and Mary, but that we're involved in that miracle. We're part of it because the process of those stories is eternal. It's going on right now. So the Pax Romana was not the setting that the Lord chose to kind of get Caesar Augustus to go along with it. He did it totally tangentially. The birth of Jesus, in the simplicity of it, in the poverty of it, in the no place for them in the inn thing, demonstrates that the Lord came to the poor. Shepherds were a very, very rough lot. They were despised. They used to take their sheep and graze it on other people's lands. And that's not going to fly very well. It's to them that the angels came, not to the senators of the Roman Empire. Totally tangential did the word come to these humble shepherds. So if you take, and I'll ask Michelle to put up this image, very simple image. The divine light comes from below, and we're part of that divine light. It comes up and it shines up and out with a limitless expanse. You don't know the effect that a good gesture or a good loving, kind word could have. It does something more than just impress the person that you're giving it. It ripples out. That child or that person will move further. It's been studied that for every harsh word that a parent gives his child, to offset that, there needs to be 10 expressions of love and blessing. That's how the impact of the negativity can be. And we need the positivity to express it much further and outward. But what's that black dark arrow going down? That's the power of those folks in the world that run governments based solely on their power. It presses down. It's a dark energy. It oppresses people. Maybe you've heard about the people of India, 30 million Christians there. And there are some extremist Hindus. They come into a church like this and they start beating up the pastor, beating up the people. One of them was beaten to death. They beat Christians and they beat up Muslims because of an arrogant pressure that they want a certain culture of Hinduism to prevail. That's what we have when we have this pressure down kind of thing. The only way to avoid that is step out of the way. Step out of the way so that you can get in touch with that inner light that wells up from within and is the birthing of Jesus. It's happening right now. It's happening to all of you and to me that believe as we gather on this Christmas Eve, do something so desperately traditional, but so desperately innovative. Because there's a vector. A vector is a line of energy that has direction and power to it. That's a vector. So there's a vector of divine light that's present in you and me that wells up. Believe in it. Rejoice in it. Share it fully. Share your light so that others, whether they come to faith, they'll maybe believe in your faith. I remember when I was in the seminary, a young woman came by who didn't have faith, and she said, I don't have faith, but I believe in your faith. Maybe that's what will help people to move from the confusion of what's true or what's not true about God or who God is, all that, is that if you believe, without being preachy like I'm doing right now, if you believe it, just live it. And your joy will be what changes the world. What's going to make a difference in the world is your love and your joy expressed. That can change people. When they were confronted by the Sanhedrin, they rejoiced that they had been found worthy to suffer. Even though people might want to hurt us, we don't have to let them do that. If you just step out of the power that's coming down from that, step over and just get in touch with this magnificent, flowering light, this vector of divine life that comes up from within you. About 40 years ago, when I was in Puerto Rico, Gina and I went to hear Leonardo Boff. Leonardo Boff is a liberation theologian. He was one of the first people that really said God's intent is a preferential love for the poor, for the oppressed. He got a lot of grief from the church at that time. They weren't particularly interested in going that particular route. He's 80 years old now, and he's written another kind of memoir kind of thing. But I'll begin to close with this poem that he wrote. A boy wants to become a man. A man wants to become a king. The king wants to become a god. And God just wants to be a boy. That's the power of the infant narrative. The power of this Jesus who loves you to death, his own, and teaches us, not by just cranking ourselves up to do it, but by the grace and righteousness that Isaiah talks about. There will come a time when peace returns. It can happen all the sooner if your heart and your mind is at peace and you rest on the Lord Christ and you let the divine vector of light shine from within you to all eternity. Amen.